Well, then we should all be aboard why it is that by age 50, about 50% of people experience pattern hair loss. That is androgen-dependent alopecia. Okay, but translated to normal English is pattern hair loss. And in a moment, you'll understand why some people lose their hair from the crown region, kind of in the back of the head or back and top of the head, whereas other people lose their hair in the front of their head, in the flanks right on either side of the midline, or maybe in the midline and front altogether. And that's because different people, depending on their genetic lineage, have different patterns of androgen receptors on their scalp. And the pattern of androgen receptors that you inherit indeed does come from your mother's side. Okay, so this is what gave rise to the myth that if you want to know if you're going to go bald or not, just look at your mother's father. It doesn't quite work that way. In fact, if you think about the logic, you should really look at your mother's mother if you want to know your pattern of androgen receptors on your scalp. However, most women don't lose as much hair from their scalp, or they have ways of covering up the hair loss in their scalp because their hair is just generally longer, or they're using other approaches, so that you never really get a clear picture of what the androgen-dependent hair loss was in your grandmother. Okay. Now, we don't want to go too far down the genetics rabbit hole because, as you know, you can't select your parents anyway. But if you want to know why, for instance, I'm losing a bit of hair on either side of the midline in the front, it almost certainly has to do with the fact that I have a higher density of androgen receptors there as opposed to, say, on the crown of my head, where for whatever reason my hair seems to grow thickest. Other people lose hair on the crown, in the back and top, but not in the front. And some people lose it all over. Now you understand why hair loss occurs in certain regions of the body. You should also understand that the androgen receptors on the face are also what are responsible for beard growth. And this is where it can get a little bit tricky, but a lot of things will start to make sense if you can understand this and internalize this. If you have a high density of androgen receptors on your face, well then as your DHT levels go up with age, you will be able to grow a thicker and thicker beard. In fact, it is rare to see someone who can grow a thick beard in their youth, but not so much as they get older. In fact, the reverse tends to be true. So the pattern of androgen receptors differs between the scalp and the face and the back. Okay, on your back, you have androgen receptors, and their DHT stimulates hair growth. So if you know someone who has a very hairy back, or if you have a very hairy back, that means you have a high density of androgen receptors on your back.